statistic came out very clearly that if we are not financing $3 to $6 million to mitigate climate change, you are likely to lose double that in the next period to come. So that's number one. Number two for me is the quest also in terms of our priorities. I know we have done a lot in terms of increasing water coverage, but I know also that our operation and maintenance is one of the biggest challenges that we are facing in the water sector. It is very critical also that as we are demanding for more resources, we ensure that operation and maintenance becomes another element in terms of ensuring that what we have already done can also be covered. My appeal also goes to my government that as we set priorities, let us look at these critical elements of water and environment. And as you can see, is that if we do not deal with the problems now, problems are likely to find us where we are if we don't deal with them now. And it's very urgent. And in my work for 15 years, I know for government, one thing is important. You can only convince me that you're going to work on a problem if you put their money. And I know that for any government, the higher the resource of a sector, the more important that sector is. At this moment, you will not convince me anymore that water is very important in our current situation, simply because we are spending so little on it. And yet I know, on a personal note, water is life. At least I understood that in my primary section. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julius. Listening to you talk, I'm going to pose my question to Dr. Alexander. I think he's online and he should be listening in. Listening to Julius talk about what a priority water is and how little we recognize that looking at our budget allocation to that. Alexander, as a key development partner, the World Bank, what could be the reason for the allocation that is given to water and environment, and what should we do to ensure that the situation changes to enable the various targets that we have to be met?
Thank you, first of all, dear colleagues. Thank you, everyone, for enjoying this Water and Environment Week in Uganda. Current allocation of the resources definitely not sufficient to achieve majority of goals which are in front of water and environment sector. However, this is resources which are available and we need to spend them wisely. We need to make sure that every shilling which is allocated to these resources is being spent and the constructed infrastructure is being used. We cannot afford any more excess of capacity. We cannot afford excess of unused infrastructure that is being built and not implemented in the country. And this is the role of the ministry to guarantee that this is happening. Second thing, we understand the issue of this short of funds, and we believe that our help and our development partners are all pooling resources to support water sector. The recent COVID experience of water and sanitation sector proved that sector, despite of all these difficulties, despite of all many things, proved that it is resilient and it is stable. None of us, none of you and none of any of us heard that any of utility or municipal water providers stopped operations or someone is dying from thirst. It's simply saying that our systems are built and they are working properly. Yes, many things became delayed. Many repair works will be postponed or are now postponed, and some resources are being saved to maintain the things, but we understand that these things are improving slowly in National Water and Sewerage Corporation and by umbrella authorities and even by rural water providers. From our side, our project is $315 million, and we know that partners, our development partners, KfW, AFD, African World Bank, they pool about the same amount of money. So with support of roughly equivalent to 50% of total budget to water sector, we're hoping to promote this and hoping to do that. But how, you asked me how to increase resources into water sector. I need to say that sector needs to start doing things in some terms that probably never been done. This time when COVID started, the government mandated, utilities mandated, ministry mandated its own umbrellas to continue services. And this costs a lot. And so then the government needs to be responsible for this cost. So someone who makes these decisions must count them and must provide at least basic relief for water providers, for environmental systems, for all the things. So we need to be ready, ministry need to be ready to calculate the loss which is associated to economic things related to the sector when this or similar regulation is coming into force. So we cannot, water sector is not, in fact, social service. What I'm saying is that it does provide social assistance, but the social assistant is not the main business of water sector. Water sector needs to provide water. And social assistance, they can provide it, they do provide it, they work with that social assistance, but it needs to be fully compensated. That's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Alexandra. Dr. Lim is not yet online, but when he comes, we shall put to him the questions we have for him. But let's move now to Engineer Eyatu. You have had a rich, long experience in the water sector, and the week has noted that the sector needs to make a strong case for itself on why it should be given more money, should be given more priority. Indeed, that is included on the recommendations as well. Share with us, based on your experience, what you think the sector needs to be doing better, what it needs to do more, in a more better way.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, my fellow panelists and the people who have spoken before me for actually talking on our side and supporting us in this course for the budget. Our theme this week is water security, and I want to relate it to the budget. I want to simplify this theme in three small statements. One is, what is water budget? Is resource availability. We need to have the water everywhere. Of course, some of it causes floods, but we need the water. The second thing I want us to notice, convenience. You need to have a bottle in front of you. All of you have a bottle in front of you. But in the rural areas, people walk 5 kilometers or spend 6 hours to get water in some areas, not everywhere. We need production. Both industrial and agricultural production needs water. So that's what I would say. How do we achieve this? I want again to reverse the question in a more sarcastic way. You give us 3% of the money, but you also give us 1 million people every year. I've been hearing, I think we've all read, because of lockdown, now the teenagers, many of them have got pregnant. Those are new mothers. So maybe this year we'll have 1.2 million children. What do you want us to do with those new entrants to the 3% that you gave us 10 years ago? This morning, I was called by a mother in the village that has it rained in Kampala. Everything is unpredictable in terms of climate. We're entering April next week. We don't have rains. Are we going to wait for rains which come, and when they come in large quantities, we need to invest in irrigation. We cannot rely on that when we're producing more children. Where we used to get our sources, we have encroached on them. I think Leila did a very good job here. Where we get water is in the forests, in the swamps. You've taken them away because you've settled there, because you're producing more children. Is 3% still enough for us to address that? Because I've even heard in some circles where people say water has enough money. What's enough? Our sector investment plan says for DWD alone we need 7.6 trillion to achieve the SDGs by 2030. That's 9 times the budget we have. And you say we have enough money? Isn't this sarcastic? In Uganda, we have a potential to irrigate 3 million hectares, so that we can flood the whole of Africa. We're importing rice, we're importing all these things, but we have potential. We are only irrigating 18,000 hectares. Apart from people who work with jerrycans, maybe. So I really want to raise that if we have to meet our needs for the current and the future generation, ladies and gentlemen, people who make decisions, we need to provide money to address this. Somebody mentioned that we must sustain it. Yes, during COVID, the most critical thing which came out was we need to wash hands with soap. That's why in my introduction I was very particular about that. We need to wash hands with soap now for COVID, but also for other diseases. So water actually puts money back into your pocket if you don't get sick. We've published enough statistics to prove that the money we spend in preventable diseases is actually a resource given to the households. The time spent, we did an analysis. I think you say that what have we done to prove our point? We did an analysis, we did a report, and we proved to Minister of Finance that investing in water actually contributes to the GDP. And we gave a very good analysis showing that. So if we have to do that, we must invest more, because they used to say, water, you are not direct contributor to the GDP. That we want to invest in sectors which directly put money. And we did an analysis, and we published a report. I don't want to go into the details, I don't have time for that. It shows that water investment, protecting the environment, provides water directly to the economy, gives money to the people, gives them time to do productive activities. How can we talk about production in the rural areas? No wonder people are moving to the urban areas at a growth of 5.5%, because when they're in the village, they spend 6 hours during the dry season like now. It's only raining here, maybe because we're in Water and Environment Week, it's raining here. But you just go to Luero, there is no rain. Follow this road, there is no rain everywhere. Those people are still spending a lot of time going to the wells to look for water. So I urge, on O&M, we've done a lot. You realize during COVID time, we actually were told not to charge people, and we are not to disconnect people. To charge but not to disconnect. Up to now, we are not disconnecting. It has caused a big challenge. Alexandra has talked about that. I don't want to go back to that. But you realize that the biggest challenge you had was not actually water in most of the areas, apart from the areas which don't have the service. So it means we are able to sustain what we provide with some challenges, with the hiccup. The biggest pressure we have on sustainability of our water system is the demand. I had somebody say that there's excess capacity. Where is that excess capacity? There are only a few isolated islands where you can talk about it. We used to design in 90s, let me refer to my old experience, we used to design for a shorter period of 10 years, but we would wipe out that capacity within 2-3 years. Now we design for 30 years, but even that disappears within 15 years. So we cannot avoid designing for the future, because otherwise we'll be in one area forever. We still have gaps in the water corridor, where there's even in the rural areas, we still have close to 30% of the population which doesn't have service. So I urge all of you who are here, who advocates our development partners, invest in water, you'll invest in the economy, you'll help the rural, and maybe we'll even address the issue of uncontrolled migration to the urban areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Engineer. You paint quite a grim picture, but I guess it shows us just how little we are investing in this area. My next question will be to you, Ms. Nadia. We know that the European Union has supported the water and environment sector for so many years now, even looking at how our own government contribution is. And you're currently the lead development partner for the environment and natural resources. What has motivated you to support these initiatives, especially those related to the environment and natural resources that don't easily have tangible outputs?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. I think it's a very interesting question you're asking, because in reality, people and ecosystems are just inseparable. So it's very difficult to say, okay, Why were you motivated to support water and environment without looking at the people that live in the ecosystem where this water and environment are? So the motivation comes from the combination of the two. The moment that you support economic growth, you cannot do it without looking at the ecosystems. And I think a big part of the motivation, especially in the last decades, was coming from the fact that you had two very interesting phenomena happening worldwide. One was the duty to preserve the environment for future generations, so all the concept of sustainable development, which reflected in very strong commitments. So it's a motivation that is in a way forced, because you commit within the Paris Agreement, you commit within major conventions to do so. So you already have a very strong framework to be motivated to achieve certain ambitions. But second, it also comes with the opportunities. It's very interesting because when I was listening this week to the different panel discussions, you see how much technology can change the way we deal with environment. You see how much we are completely changing our way we think about economic growth. Green economy, Uganda has a Uganda Development Green Growth Strategy, which is one of the best that you can find. So, and it sets very clear ways of working. You have an event last Saturday with the flip-flop expedition where you could see local opportunities for doing things differently. And that was very interesting. Within a framework of an expedition which is a regional initiative. It's not imported from somewhere else. It's born in Kenya, and the expedition was to raise awareness around Lake Victoria. So all these things completely get motivated in the way of working. And we are discussing in this framework about payment for ecosystem services, which was even not imaginable, I think, 10 years ago, because it's really focused on the fact that environment has a value, not only for what it provides on a daily basis in terms of livelihood, but what it provides globally. And I think another point of motivation is also very specific to Uganda, which is a country that has such a rich biodiversity that you really see the potential of promoting that. There are some countries that are in much more difficult environmental situations, for example, due to desertification that is ongoing in many sub-Saharan countries. While here you really see the potential. So, of course, this can just motivate you to move on, because you see that things can actually change.
Okay, thanks so much, Nadia. Let me now come to Mrs. Emma from the Stanbic Bank. We want to understand from you, from the perspective of the private sector, in this case, Stanbic Bank being involved in initiatives related to sustainable development, and how you think management of water and environment resources can contribute to socio-economic development. What is that motivation that Stanbic Bank gets in order to involve itself in some of these initiatives?
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. At Stanbic, we say Uganda is our home, and we drive our growth, and part of that growth is about sustainability. So as private sector, a number of companies are involved in different sustainability projects. But at Stanbic, one of the things we're really excited about is a partnership with KCCA, Coca-Cola, and it's KCCA, Coca-Cola, and plastics. And we're collecting all these plastics from all over the place so that they don't get into the lake. I live in Bunga, and just before my home there is a stream that goes into the lake, and whenever it rains, there's a guy there who collects all the bottles to ensure that they don't get into the lake. So this is one of the areas that we've been involved in. We also, obviously, from a corporate banking perspective, support National Water and support the ministry in different areas. And also from our branch networks, get involved in the different projects in the upcountry. So our confidence really is coming from the fact that we're Ugandans, and we need to ensure that we leave a better Uganda for our children, like Leila, who just told us to plant trees. On the planting tree side, we've also been involved with the ministry planting trees. Previously, we had also done that through our national schools program, encouraging our schools to plant fruit trees within their compounds. And I think last year we did about 30,000 fruit trees across the country. So we are motivated to do this because really Uganda is our home and we drive our growth, and we'd also want to leave it sustainable for the next generation.
Thank you very much, Emma. Julius, I'm going to come back to you now, and let's talk about solutions. In an environment where grant financing is reducing, how can adequate financial resources be secured for the sustainable development and management of water and environment resources so that they can effectively contribute to sustainable socio-economic development, employment, and wealth creation under NUSAF 3? NDP.
Yes. Thank you so much. First of all, I'll be a bit controversial. Grant financing reducing, it could be a blessing in disguise. You know, sometimes is when you have free things coming to you, it might actually be very, very less innovative. And I think as government, we've sort of become we've gone in a comfortable zone, knowing somebody is going to be able to help us. But COVID has told us things are different. That charity begins at home. When the crisis strikes, everybody looks internal. First solve your problems before you look outside. And as such, I think for me, I'm not even worried that actually we don't have the money. The money we have it in this country, but it's a question of how we are setting priorities. So number one is let us prioritize in this country and put money where it's supposed to be. You've heard us talking about, for example, why are we creating all these districts? Why are we having all these MPs? Why are we having all these boards and commissions and everybody? That's where the money is being wasted. And I think for me is we could make savings and bring it to where we're supposed to put the money. So that's number one. Number two is sustainable finance water is also to begin to tap into the private sector. And I think for me, an environmental tax, for example, which we are currently doing, is a very good measure. But I don't know how much of that comes to water and environment. I really don't know how much of that comes to water and environment. Everything goes to concerted fund, and once something goes to concerted fund, what happens there? You still remain with your ceiling. It doesn't even come out. I know we are charging VAT on water, but I don't know how much of that has been used to expand the water system. Maybe we could say that something like that is there. So we need to tap to the private sector and design a system so that they can be able to contribute to environmental destruction. And for me, that's very important. We know that there are certain companies, certain practices contribute to environmental degradation. How are we posting that back to them so they can help in terms of restoring? That will definitely reduce the burden on the ministry in terms of looking for funds or restoring our ecosystem. The other element I think we also look out for is efficiency. And I think our online colleague talked about it, is efficiency. I'm very glad that the meetings I've attended where I have seen sectors defending that their projects should not be cut or should not be suspended because of poor performance. I have not seen their water. Because to us advocates for social sector spending, increasing social sector spending, including water, sometimes we are let down. You are arguing, please, this sector needs more money, that's where everybody is, and then they tell you, but you see, you are advocating for your sector, which returns back money. So why should we give them more money when we are returning back, even the little that we are giving them? So efficiency gains within the sector is very critical and also very important. Lastly is, I've loved the case which he has brought up, but I'll just blame him for one thing. We need this in the public arena. We need this in the public arena. Jane will tell you that before you stand in front of a committee of parliament with wrong data, the moment you mention it, you just want the ground to follow you. But with very strong data, everybody is going to listen until you finish. They not even ask you any other question because they have the clarity that you have made for that particular case. Let's have the data in the public. Maybe not with me, but let's have the data with the public. We will defend financial sustainability for the water sector. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that. Thanks, Julius. Back to Dr. Alexandra. I hope he's still with us online. Dr. Alexandra.
Chelsea is, you can proceed.
Okay. Doctor, the water and environment sector has been looked at, including this week, as very important in guaranteeing regional peace and security, especially due to issues related to transboundary nature of water resources and also internal security, especially because society demands that water and environment resources are used sustainably for livelihood. What do you think about this, and how do you think this can be, framed in such a way that even those people who are supposed to cater for the budgetary allocations understand this? How do we understand this argument?
Dr. Alexander, you're on mute, so perhaps the
Sorry. Okay. Yes, I'm here. Yes, sorry. Regional understanding of issues, regional understanding of problems is extremely important for the things. We all understand that borders, which Uganda has with its neighbors, are not corresponding to environmental borders like river basins or some of the things, and so mutual dependence of each other, mutual dependence, respect each other's needs, and use of resources is critical. And World Bank fully understand that. We have several projects related to mutual cooperation of Lake Victoria. Now we have a Great Lakes assessment within Lake Albert, and other lakes which are included into that sector. And we are trying to make as much as possible cooperation possible. We fully understand, for example, like right now, the decision of now past President of Tanzania moved the capital to Dodoma. And so Dodoma has no water resources, and now all discussion is happening where to get water, and one of them is from your Lake Victoria too. And so we all need to be aware of the things and need to understand and need to balance these things that can affect our sustainability and stability. So dialogue and discussions and mutual projects, joint projects may help us to work together. And it's important that your leadership, your political and Ministry of Water and Environment political leadership will communicate with Lake Victoria Commission, with this Nile Basin River Commission, and fully be ready for involvement and for concessions that can be maybe needed to improve economic development. Addition to that, it's probably time to establish your inventory of users of water who are consuming water, how they're consuming water, and guarantee that this water is not wasted. Water is used economically and neatly and not wasted. And so this can be also things, and this thing. And lastly, which is extremely important, and Dr. Kalis mentioned it today, we need to publish documents. We need to share the information. We need to be ready to analyze this information. And this, especially political information related to international water and stability, regional stability with water, is very critical. You know that, for example, this current tensions between let's say Ethiopia and Sudan on water is not simply resolvable. So the objective is to create a situation when this kind of conflicts are not being accelerated and need to be controlled by the teams in the countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexander. I'm going to come to you, Engineer Joseph, and Julius spoke about involving the private sector and also make them to make bigger contributions. And I want to bring that question to you. How best, and if you actually agree with him, you might not, how best do you think the private sector can be made to contribute and to complement service delivery in the water and environment sector? What incentives do you think should be given to them to enable them to contribute as they're required?
Okay, thank you very much, Ernie. One of the things that we as a sector have been doing over the years, we realize that as we are not able to increase our ceiling, we have to look at innovative ways of financing the budget. All these ways are there. Private sector is one of the areas we've gone to. We have also worked still with partners. We moved from grants. I think somebody mentioned grants. We've now moved to loans, and we have tried to defend and justify that there is enough space for us to sustain these loans in terms of return on investment. We have worked with a number of non-governmental organizations to, especially the most vulnerable, and especially during emergencies. During emergencies, you find that we don't have a lot of time for all these long discussions. So we work with the NGOs, and they are well represented here, who actually help us to intervene, because their bureaucracy is not very, very efficient like ours. Our bureaucracy is very efficient, so it takes a bit longer, but that's what public resources are supposed to be. So now you talked about the private sector. Private sector, we're working with the private sector. We worked on the private sector. We started on a small scale in the management of water supply systems. We brought them in. We also brought them into financing, and they finance a few pipe schemes in the area, in different areas, in Kapchoro and others. But we realized that there is also this much you can get directly as investment. But there are specific interventions that we've worked, I think Uganda breweries, Coca-Cola and others, even during the recent COVID, where we realized that the private sector is very effective and they, under their social responsibility, we've worked with them very nicely. I want to bring an example of sanitation, for instance, because we talk about water supply, but sanitation pollutes what we try to provide people to drink, either when they're taking them home or in their houses, and sometimes by the hands. Most of us pollute our water with the hands because we don't wash them with soap regularly. So under sanitation, we worked with actually banks, Stanbic, we worked with the DTV and other number, where we have been helping to finance communities to build actually their facilities, because government policy is that we are giving you the knowledge, we are providing you with the environment and the designs, but you finance. And we've worked for a long time now with the banks to finance people, to give them loans, which they pay at their convenience, like in the rural areas when they harvest, in the urban areas at agri rates. And that has worked very well. We have also worked with a number of private sectors, private players, like in the West, we worked with the Nile breweries to try to see how we protect the resource itself, because they are beneficiaries. There are industries that benefit directly, so they are also willing to invest directly because they are beneficiaries of the resource, and they have supported us to work on that. We worked with a number, like drinks industries, they really, most of it is water. I don't want to talk about percentages because I might get into conflict. But most of it is water, and because they need the water resource, we've worked with them to see how we sustain this. So we met the private sector, but I also want to add that the investment we're talking about is 7.6 trillion for us to reach the goals that everybody gets convenience, The vision, it says 2040, SDG says 2030. Say whichever you give us, we need to increase our budget by 9 times. So how much can the private sector do it on its own? They can do this much. The government must come in and do its part. Either through loans, either through development partners, whatever the people give us, they give us through government. So government will still become a major player, but we thank the private sector for their contributions. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for clapping, and may I request that when you're clapping for a good view, please clap properly so that they feel energized to share with us more knowledge. Ms. Nadia, back to you. In your view, there has been a discussion about partnerships and, you know, with different communities in order to create a sustainable environment. In your view, how do you think that vulnerable groups such as the youth, women, the disabled can be involved in the conservation and development of water, environment and natural resources in order to address the impact, adverse really to say, of climate change?
Thank you for this question, because I personally think it's an extremely critical one, in the sense that when I read the big agreements around climate change, when I read the policies, very often vulnerable groups are mainstreamed or embedded, but not specifically targeted. And I'm sorry, but we need to consider that those are the groups that have the most limited adaptive capacities to climate change in most of the countries. And this means that not only they suffer the most, but they are also the ones that depend the most. If you look, for example, at cooking and the charcoal value chain in Uganda and the role played by women, they depend from those natural resources. So whatever you do, you cannot do it without involving them. And for me, it's essential to operate at 3 very distinctive but interconnected levels. One is really the global level, to give a voice. We have seen over the past few years what Fridays for Future has brought to the attention. Kids have taken the lead in raising awareness. So this is essential because it's their future. So how to support them to have a voice so that when the big conventions are negotiated, they are not only mainstreamed, but they are a focus on what we want to do, because I'm sorry, but it's their future. Second, in terms of national policies, we have beautiful policies, but I must say that before coming here, I went to look at the PIP of the Natural Resource Environment, Land and Water program, and women are mentioned once, and security of land tenure. Youth are not mentioned at all. This doesn't mean they are not in the NDP 3. I'm not saying that. They're probably mentioned in other programs. There is probably a dedicated program. But when you link it to natural resources, then you need to focus also on them. You cannot just have one reference on one thing only, like land tenure security, including the women, not only focused on women. So this is very important. But then third, every reality at the local level is different. At the sectoral level is different. So let me give you 2 examples. We talk a lot about access to finance, essential, but how to bring the access to finance closer to the local authorities that are the ones that then need to work with the communities, because there you can target better those vulnerable groups. You have programs doing it. We are funding programs. We are funding one program in Uganda doing that, trying to bring climate finance closer to the populations, because then in each district you may have different realities, and you would be able to target them in a different way, not only mainstreaming them. Once you stay at the national level, it's much more difficult to have a dedicated focus on those groups. When you work on the charcoal value chain, okay, very good, let's focus on having alternatives, essential for the environment, but then you need to ensure that women have alternative livelihoods, because otherwise you are affecting them even worse, because a lot of them depend on that. So those are all very interconnected things that become essential once you want to try and target the vulnerable groups.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nadia. And I'm going to come to you, and again also speaking about vulnerable groups. I noticed from your bio that you serve on the board of Nyaka AIDS Foundation, and you also look after 500 orphans and vulnerable children. So you are clearly in contact with very many vulnerable groups. How do you think groups like youth, women, the disabled can be supported to engage in employment and job creation around water, environment, and natural resources?
Thank you. Just a little bit about the way Nyaka has done it in Kanungu. Whereas initially the project was about education, it became very clear that we couldn't get to the education level without sorting out water. So part of the project is actually two water projects to the communities that we serve, so that the children would not have to first go and collect water before they go to school, or instead of doing homework, they're collecting water. So the project was able to do gravitation water, and on the back of that, the grandmothers have grown their crops. On the back of that, so water in itself created a bigger effect on the initial project, which was only about education. Using that model and looking at different vulnerable groups, I think water creates an ability for the community to grow, and therefore is one that we should be part of all the projects. At Stanbic, we're looking at, as part of the economic recovery, we're looking at how we can support circles, and speaking to Alfred last week and water for production, we're now thinking how we can incorporate, the buying of, say, pumps, or even increasing the current projects with this circle money that we have, because it's cheaper money, it's into agriculture, and of course, with agriculture, you need water to be able to increase your yield, to be able to have more planting seasons in a year, and therefore it makes sense to incorporate the water component in all these development projects that we're doing, so that they can actually build on what the initial intent was. So yes, I think the water piece does bring about a multiplier effect in whatever project you're looking to do.
Thanks a lot, Emma. I need to come back to Julius. We have been discussing the issue of the budget allocation and all that, and one of the things that we need to learn from you, given the key experiences that you hold through your involvement in budget advocacy, how do you think that going forward, what are the things that the sector should capture and utilize, especially in relation to the NDP3, to be relevant to the NDP3? What can you advise the water and environment sector?
Thank you. I think in terms of going forward, we need to be also a little more innovative. Since Wednesday and Thursday, I was engaged in another discussion about debt, and I think one of the things that came out was around they are trying to explore green bonds. And I was like, does this belong to you, or it belongs to another sector? So you can see that people are very quick in running to explore these financing options before you touch them. In my view, I think this is something you need to do very quickly, organize yourself, to begin to look at that particular element of financing. And I think also we could boost on our carbon credit system so that we can see how it can also benefit the sector.
Julius, I'm just going to ask you to explain about green bonds, because we don't want to assume everybody knows what you're talking about.
The little knowledge I got yesterday, because it was somebody made a presentation, was that it's like the infrastructure bond. People bring in money based on what you want to finance, and I think it's something I think we need to explore. And I think when I was informed that I was coming, it's something I wanted to mention here, so that people who have expertise in this particular area, it is something, an item that probably could try to explore and say whether it can be relevant for this particular ministry. I'm sure the doctor might have more knowledge about it. In terms of also going forward, I think also leadership is very key, especially if you want to get more resources. And I'm also very happy that the permanent secretary is among the stars. We need to see, I know that the times ahead are likely to be very tough, especially with institutions such as these ones. We need to see strong leadership. What do I mean by strong leadership? Certain things are going to be done that are going to be detrimental to this particular sector in terms of its objectives. They will say, we are going to put a factory here in a wetland because this factory is very important and for other things. Is the sector ready enough to say, hold on please, this is likely to cause more problems? How is the sector prepared? I think for me that is very key and very important. Why? Because if we see environment being degraded and it is the government that is promoting it, then we as citizens and the ordinary citizens will just follow suit. Nobody is going to touch us. Then it becomes difficult to urge for any more funding or any more financing for the particular sector. How is the sector prepared to provide that strong leadership? One answer I could give is the partnership we are talking about. There are things that the sector will never say in Parliament, will never say on TV, will not even say here where we are seated today. But I know some people are very well qualified to say it without fear or favor on behalf of that sector. We know the political economy in this country. Let us not shy about it. We know it. So it is very important that you have also your strategic partners whom you trust, who can send that critical message that you need to be delivered at a particular time to the right to the right people. Lastly, in terms of way forward for me and for the sector, is we have the whole this issue around job creation. And from the president up to the LC1, you can hear that is the agenda everybody is singing. It would also be very important that we also begin to document in terms of our contribution to the economy, but also in terms of job creation, so that we can sing the same song, but knowing exactly what we want as a particular sector. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Julius. I'm going to ask the last question to Dr. Alexander, who is joining us online. We're running out of time, and we're live on 2 TV stations, NBS TV and BBC TV, and this session ends at 5 p.m. Dr. Alexander, what should the water and environment sector do to enhance its share of the national budget and attract more funding from development partners like the World Bank? Do you think the sector is doing enough in this regard already? What more can it do?
Thank you very much. This is a very critical and very important question. We need to do few things together. And this is actually ball is more on Uganda side rather than on the World Bank. We have a very trained, experienced people in Ministry of Water and Environment. We have even more trained and experienced people at the ministry, at the National Water and Sewerage Corporation, who provide water in urban areas. It's time for you to think how to create your own projects and provide them to funding. All our donors, all without exception, we use the same procurement tools with the same political instruments for implementation of projects, and it's time for Ugandans to decide and become drivers in development of water projects. It's not no time to waste. It's needed that the projects are developed and prepared, and they are prepared according to the rules of the game of international donors. You need to learn from China, you need to learn from Chile, you need to learn from South Korea, who came to that idea a long time ago, more than 20, 30 years ago, when they stopped waiting for the bank to come with the project. Instead, they were preparing projects themselves, providing them, preparing all these relocations, assessment, and all the things according to the rules and according to the terms and conditions which are make your financing available. It is not easy process. It may take maybe 5-10 years, and it's not only applied to the water sector, but for all other sectors. But it's time to start doing it in a way that it will be systematic and will be absolutely driven by you. The problem for us is that when we're preparing project jointly with our colleagues, everything is perfect. However, disbursement is lagging. We preparing projects, and then it takes 1 year to process it through the parliament. It takes another year to process all necessary documents through all the things. These 2 years can be done, can be saved if the project is prepared by you and given us to finance it in a manner how it is being done. Also, I need to say that you have very good leadership. I slightly disagree. We have a very good leadership at the Ministry of Water and Environment. We have very good leadership at the National Water and Sewage Corporation, which is part of the Ministry of Water and Environment. They are very thoughtful and nice professionals, very hardworking professionals. And I can say that they are thinking is absolutely corresponding with our businesses, and attracting new resources is in their agenda. You may know that Stanbic Bank is financing external loan to the National Water and Sewage Corporation. And this kind of process, which was mentioned today, discussion on bond security, we are thinking about this, that bond can be easily financed through IFC and through other instruments which bank has, and it can attract more and more resources which will be available for your water and sewage providers. And think about it like Nexus Energy and Water, and then this can be financed through so when you have common projects like hydropower and all other things that can be financed through such bonds and through such systems, which is not common for Uganda yet, but it will become common. There is also one thing which is which is difficult to Uganda. You need to probably simplify several procedures which require a lot of time, a lot of approvals, a lot of documents, a lot of things which are going through structures and systems. And it's kind of surprising because when you live in private life, everything is relatively very much simple in the country. But when you do something formally, it never happens. So we need to think together how to simplify the things, how to attract more resources, and how to make Ugandans into a driver's seat for borrowing, not only from the World Bank, from every donor which you have. My understanding, it's my personal opinion, I immediately apologize, and don't spread it too much. I believe that there are a lot of money for the water sector. There is no good projects, and it's our time to make these projects available. Thank you.
Thanks, Doctor. We are now coming towards the close, and I'll request Emma, Engineer Yatu, and Nadia to respond to the questions coming in just about 1 minute, if possible, because we have been joined by the guest of honor who is going to close, and but we need to ensure that we cover the issues that are still left. To Engineer Yatu now, we commonly now refer to the issue of the value chains and all that kind of thing, innovations, creativity, for jobs and for job creation and employment. How can the water and environment sector improve and expand the value chain of innovations to increase reach and eventually create more jobs for our young people?
Well, thank you very much. I recognize our minister who's here. I think I'm going to start responding to this question in a different way, but I will come to it. Why? One of the reasons why we feel as a sector that we're in a good position to receive more money is because we're accountable. And I would be unfair to the audience watching and listening if I don't account for what you've given us. We've asked for more money, more money, more money. But over the years, we've moved the sector like water supply from the 90s at about 25% to now 68% in rural areas and 70%. Those are achievements. From the resources that you've given us, we've not reached the end, but we've moved far. From about 10 years, we've tried to move our irrigation potential from almost zero, because whatever we had had collapsed to about 18,000 hectares, and every year we're increasing. We have increased our storage with the very big times. We have done small-scale irrigations across the country, and we have proved that productivity and production increases between 3 and 5 times depending on the industry we're talking about. Karamoja used to be a problem to the people in the northeast. I'm sure you might have felt it. But because of the small intervention we have done in Karamoja by building dams, just 3 large dams, the situation has changed. Now we have another problem, flooding in Teso. The water is coming, the people are not following them in security. In all those areas around Acholi, Lango, Teso, Bugisu, Kapchora, are having a bit of this. So water contributes to security. So that's accountability I wanted us to talk about. Each of these small irrigation schemes, that's only 10 acres. But the effect, I was listening to NBS without praising them, I think last night, they were showing a farmer in Zimbabwe who had got a valet through the equipment that were provided. We've been providing equipment for people to do, which has proved very successful. I'm bringing my point with that. And now he got a pump, was provided by government a pump to pump water, and 3 families are benefiting. And the level of productivity that has happened is very big. One of the things that we need to invest in is provide credit to farmers, to the sector, through the sector, because the missing link is not the land. People are still on their smallholder. The missing link is, of course, some seed. Yes, somebody is doing that. But for us, the missing link is water. And if the farmers are provided with water and they do the other distribution network, will improve productivity. So that's accountability I wanted. On O&M, for the money you have given us, we have done very well. The best managed organization is in this ministry. And I'm sure you all agree with us that National Water and Storage Corporation is the best managed organization in this country. It's here. We have set up umbrella organizations which are now managing the medium-scale simulation. They are young, they are growing, but they are providing service which we couldn't sustain under the community management. So whatever you invest with us, we can sustain and able to provide to those services. I think that's what I thought would be the best for us to conclude.
Thank you very much, Engineer. We've run out of time, but I want to come to you, Nadia, for my last question, and I really don't think I should make it a question. I just want you to share with us, from the activities from this entire week, what your takeaway has been that you think is important that we should know and reflect on.
They are multiple, but for the sake of time, I just want to focus on bridging the gap between the available sustainable finance instruments and the reality on the ground. You have, at the global level, more and more programs to promote green investments, climate finance, green bonds. You mentioned it. All development financial institutions worldwide are committed to do more in this. Now the big question is, how do we ensure that that Uganda becomes attractive for these programs? Because the moment you make Uganda attractive to those programs, you tackle multiple issues that have been mentioned this week. So you go cross-sectoral, it's not focusing on one thing. You can really tackle many of them. This is where, for example, development partners can play an interesting role, because we are on the ground and we can help bridge that gap.
That was very precise. Thank you.
I liked it too, and which brings me finally to Mrs. Emma. Your role is can never be understated, the role of the private sector and especially the financial sector. What do you think, what do you see as your biggest contribution in helping the sector address some of the issues raised during this week? And also you can also cap it with what you see as your takeaway from the summary of discussions held this Water Week.
Yes, I think from a financial institutions perspective is to be more intentional about including the water part in. We're all looking at agriculture now as the big thing, but you cannot look at agriculture without looking at water. I mean, you can see we're all confused about the weather right now. We thought it should have already been raining, but it isn't. So imagine if we are confused, how much more confused the farmer is. So that is the one thing. But one takeaway I'm taking away is the green bond, because I think there's an opportunity there. And it works best if you work in partnership. So between the development organizations who know the country, like my sister said, and who can create some visibility on the good things that are happening in the country, and then the good projects that the technocrats can put together, but then also the advisory then that the financial institution can bring for us to work together with government, obviously, because then we tap into an investor who is more interested in the environment as opposed to the investor who's chasing for interest rate or return on their capital. So that's a takeaway for me and something that I'd like to look into a bit more.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for the entire panel, including those who joined us online, like Doctor. Thank you very much. Josephine?
Right. I want to recognize the presence of the State Minister for Water, Honorable Chimule. Thank you so much for joining us. I also want to recognize the presence of the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Water and Energy, Honorable Alfred Okoto Kidi. Thank you so much.
Water and Environment.
Water and Environment, forgive me. Thank you for joining us.
They are all ease.
Before we leave the panelists to sit down, I thought it would be nice to have a picture with Leila. And so I would like to invite our chief guest and Leila to please come up and let's take a picture so that you are captured.
We need her captured and recorded for the Ministry of Water and Environment records. Leila, come up. And Dr. Kalis, you can join them. I think Leila needs to have a picture with you as well.
And Dr. Dongo.
The Permanent Secretary, Dr. Dongo, kindly, the Honorable Minister, we are breaking protocol, but we just want to, this girl beautifully dressed, and she presented such song on the environment. The Honorable Minister, the PS, kindly. Official cameras, we don't want a lot of crowding, just the official camera persons. The next pictures will be taken after the event. But this is just for the sake of our wonderful little girl here. Leila, I'm sure when you keep this picture, 20 years from now, when the environment is better, you will remember your role. Thanks a lot. I think that will do. Thanks a lot. Now, the panel, you may also take up your seats down, and so that we now move into the beginning of the end of the ceremony. Josephine, kindly take us through the next stage.
So Dr. Kalis mentioned earlier that there was a youth debate that was happening in the morning, and we just want to have the awarding ceremony, very quick ceremony of the winners of the debate.
We now invite Edwin Muhumuza to come up to the podium and announce for us that part of the ceremony. Edwin is the proprietor or executive director or founder of the Green Uganda. You're most welcome, Edwin.
Thank you so much, my big brother. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, good afternoon. My name is Edwin Muhumuza. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Youth Go Green Uganda, an organization of young people that are making interventions on issues of climate change, water, and environment resources. An organization that is currently mentoring the leaders to make an impact on the environment issues. Ladies and gentlemen, Youth Go Green has the network of young people, and we now register close to 2 million youth who are making tremendous work in safeguarding our natural resources. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to say that we have mentored Leila, we have mentored other young people, children that are communicating messages to safeguard the environment. I remember, ladies and gentlemen, that at the opening session of this high-level engagement of Water Environment Week, we had 2 young girls who recited poems on water and environment resources. We are currently trying to put together children and youth to understand these issues, and we have this climate change young academy that we want to bring on board different youth who are really making interventions. But specifically, I want to really appreciate the Ministry of Water and Environment, and specifically Honorable Minister of Water and Environment, and also the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Water and Environment that gave us the opportunity to partner with the institution of this ministry to undertake different interventions, but most importantly to bring youth on board. Ladies and gentlemen, I may not give this whole speech, but I must appreciate the ministry again for giving young people space to participate in the Uganda Water and Environment Week. And every year we have a dialogue, we have debates, we have games, we have activities. But this year we decided to have our first national youth debate. This debate was mainly on the utilization of natural resources for and livelihood security. Of course, we derive this from the main theme of the Water and Environment Week. This morning, you are aware that we had a session which was session 22, and we put out a call of young people who are making different interventions to this process. So we decided that we would bring together youth from different parts of the country, and on this note, we had selected 6 youth debaters, but out of 6, we had the best 3. So the best 3 were judged according to style, presentation of their case, content, understanding the issue, and strategy, how they respond to the issue. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a way of inspiring and motivating the young people. So I want to say that Honorable Minister and the Permanent Secretary, we are going to award these youth winners, and we are going to award them with fruit seedlings and then the cash prize of 500,000. I want to call upon the following who made it to the finals, and we want to do this annually. I want to call Mr. Mahad. If you are in, please step forward so that we have this ceremony conducted by Honorable Minister and the Permanent Secretary. The second is Anita Komugisha, and the third one is Edna. So please just come forward. And Honorable Minister, these are the young people that are inspiring the youth out there, and I want to say that congratulations once again for this group. They will be awarded with fruit seedlings, which they have already been allocated to, and we encourage them to plant trees, plant fruits, so they can create wealth, so that they can empower other communities. But also, I want to say, Honorable Minister, that these young people will be awarded with a cash prize of $500,000. This is 500,000 that will be able to go out there and impact on their communities. So on this note, Honorable Minister, I want to request you together with the Permanent Secretary to come over and just conduct this quick ceremony of handover, and we'll be happy that the young people out there who are watching this process should be mentored, inspired, and put together to undertake this engagement. So Honorable Minister, these young people are really doing great, and I want to say that each one will get $500,000 as a cash prize, and I want to have the Honorable Minister give the best. The first person was Mahad, so he scored highly, was followed by Anita, and Edna came third. So Honorable. Thank you so much. I will say Anita came second. And the third person was Edna. I will request all of you to, we need to confirm whether it's money or there is nothing else, so that we can have confidence. So please, let's check whether this is real money or dollars or Ichwani. So we want to be sure on this process, so that we have, put it out. I want to see. Yes, congratulations, ladies and gentlemen, and this is the team that made it. Thank you, Mr. Pierce, for supporting the young people.
Can I request them to pose for a picture with the minister and the peers? Let them, yeah, with Edwin as well. Let them come, yes, in the, yeah, something like that. Thank you very much. Let's clap for them. Let's clap for them. We are discussing variously sustainable conservation, and without young people, we cannot talk about sustainability. They are the future.
Thank you.
And not just the future, but also the current, they are the current future, so to speak. Thank you, Honorable Minister and the peers. Ladies and gentlemen, now allow me invite to make his remarks, and then kindly invite the guest of honor. With your permission, I invite the PS, Ministry of Water and Environment, Mr. Alfred Okot Okidi. You're most welcome, sir. Let's put our hands together for him. Thank you.
The Honorable Minister of State for Water, our chief guest for this evening, Your Excellencies, the members of the diplomatic corps present here, our development partners, our beloved sponsors, the private sector, the panelists, civil society organizations and NGOs, the young, or what we call in Rotary the next generation, the media, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Minister of Water and Environment, I'm truly delighted to all of you for the active participation in this Water and Environment Week, the 4th Water and Environment Week, which I must say, under the circumstances, for us to get online, primarily and physically, over 1,300 people participating is truly a success. And I'd like to say thank you for your participation. It has been a week of dialogue, and very practical dialogue. It has been a week of discussion. It has been a week of revelations. But it has also been a week of opportunities for us as a ministry to discover the untapped potentials we have, especially with the private sector. We are delighted that the private sector is not responding out of coercion, but this is voluntary participation by the private sector in matters of water and environment. 85% of the jobs globally depend directly or indirectly on water, so it is absolutely critical. And the fact that we have you on board, we want to encourage you. Let us not wait for laws or rules and coercions to come in place. There are things that we have seen through the dialogue, including what was today in Protea, that the private sector on their own can drive changes in this particular sphere. I would also like to thank the young people for their participation. The success of this country squarely rests on them. For us, we need to mentor them And that is what we are doing, so that they shoulder the responsibility that is really theirs for the future. And therefore, to the next generation, Youth Go Green, Little Hands, I know Leah, she's actually the second time she's performing for us. And she has actually recorded a very nice album on environment that I participated in by way of little support, and support her and buy that album and listen to it. It is wonderful. And we need more such people. The other area that came out very strongly that we need to reflect and carry forward is the issue of partnerships. When we have partnerships, we come on board on equal footing and with respect, but with the attendant responsibilities. And I think at the end of this Water and Environment Week, that is a message that we go out with, that we should implement and strengthen. The many sponsors that we have seen here, I'm truly thankful and indebted to you. These are the partners who supported us financially, but there are many more who supported us technically, etc. The challenges facing water resources and environment cannot be addressed squarely and only by government and development partners or NGOs. The private sector has a much bigger say and a bigger role to play. So let us strengthen these partnerships. To the National Organizing Committee, chaired by Dr. Florence Adong and deputized by Dr. Kalis, you did my job and freed me to do other things, and what you have done is exemplary and wonderful, and I'd like to say thank you to you and team. And to the media, you have really covered us extremely well, and as I always mention, we rely on you to carry our voices and carry the fight for environment. And what you are doing, we don't take for granted, but we treasure. Be our ally. Name and shame those guys who are bringing us backward in terms of those who are polluting, degrading, and destroying our environment. I was given only 5 minutes, they are over. It is now my singular honor and responsibility to call upon the Minister of State for Water, Honorable Ronald Chibule, to come and address you and close this meeting. Honorable, thank you. See you in the Safe Water and Environment meeting next year. Thank you.
Thank you, the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Alfred Okot. You have invited the people for the next Water Week. Nadia, the First Secretary and Head of Sustainable Development Sector, European Union Delegation. Alexander, the Senior Water and Sanitation Specialist at the World Bank. Executive Directors and Directors, Heads of Departments, representatives of the private sector and civil society organizations. All other stakeholders present, allow me take about 5 minutes to really close this function. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my singular honor and pleasure to officiate the closing of the 4th Uganda Water and Environment Week 2021. I wish to thank you for completing a full week of activities that included dialogue, technical presentations, applied training courses, virtual field fireside events, and the debate. The debate is a new innovation that has not been here as part of our activities in the last water weeks. I thank those who have participated. Good enough, they have been recruited for the next they have adopted Dr. Dong and Kadis. I think we have adopted this as an activity even for the next. So I thank them for really our staff. For this theme, it is meant to call for action the need to sustainably develop and manage water and environment resources for the benefit of all Ugandans now and in the future. People forget the environment controls our lives. Without environment, you cannot talk of water, because water is a resource that is enjoyed by everyone, and when we don't show the cause and the need to have it jealously guarded, we lose out today and the future. So I wish therefore to thank the staff of the Ministry of Water and Environment and other various partners for organizing this event, for bringing together all the stakeholders to dialogue on these issues affecting the sector. Of course, year in, year out, the question of funds keep on coming and technical knowledge required or innovations. But I thank the sponsors for increasing from 4 to 20 this year, those who have participated. I take note and we are so grateful. We look forward for your continued support and collaboration, both financial and technical. Ladies and gentlemen, this week's event has clearly demonstrated that water and environment is an absolute necessity for people, planet, and prosperity, a very core for sustainable development. Safe drinking water and adequate sanitation and hygiene are pillars of human health, well-being of the population. This week has further highlighted the dependence of the country on the stock of environment and natural resources to deliver water, environmental and natural resources, goods and services in order to enhance production and productivity. Ladies and gentlemen, provision of water for domestic use and production remains a big challenge. Access to safe water in rural and urban areas of Uganda stands at 71%, in the rural and in large towns 79% respectively. Similarly, water storage capacity for productivity uses such as irrigation, livestock and other uses remain very low. For instance, valley tanks, dams, you know, where I saw Engineer Yat here in one of his presentations was talking about the storage. Teso suffers because of Karamoja. They get water and get floods and then get drought. What is the logic? Storage capacity. If you don't invest in storage, then water will still become a problem for some areas like Kasese. A lot of efforts therefore need to be put into provision of water and sanitation services to reduce the disease burden, enable the women and the youth to be spared from collecting water in order to promote production and also create employment, and therefore wealth creation will be achieved. These are three fundamental points. The disease burden, the runoff turn out to become cholera. Urban areas are affected by cholera simply because of all this dirty water coming from our pit latrines and whatever. And once we don't address such challenges, our disease burden will always go high, and water, safe water, may be a solution, at least on short term. The other issue of employment, our youth, I had Edwin here, they talk of industries. No industry will come to Uganda without addressing industrialization. How do we achieve it? Water is a requirement. Water is a necessity. Environment is the key. Because other countries, they safeguard the environment for even factories. In China, you don't bring every factory everywhere without following that safeguard of their environment. And since Uganda is in the course of achieving industrialization, we need to be very vigilant to our environment as well. And this calls for the private sector to invest in. I thank the Permanent Secretary has been an advocate for the private sector to be our collaborators in terms of maintaining our environment. Allow me thank the panelists and those who presented the technical presentations during this week. The varying uses of water are interlinked and require sustainable exploitation and management to ensure that there is adequate water of the right quality and quantity for both production and domestic use, even during dry seasons. Similarly, Uganda faces continuing and increasing challenges to environmental and natural resources management, calling for greater efforts to ensure that these resources are sustainably managed for the present and future generations. I wish therefore to call upon all of you to join hands with the ministry to ensure that the above challenges are addressed. I assure you of my ministry's commitment to implement the recommendations of Uganda Water and Environment Week 2021, and it's my singular honor to officially or formally declare the 4th Uganda Water and Environment Week closed for God and my country.
Let's put our hands again for the Honorable Minister, our guest of honor. Let's clap for the PS as well for gracing this occasion and for the leadership. Most importantly, let's put our hands together for the organizing committee, Dr. Kalis, Dr. Dongo, and the entire team, the Central Organizing Committee. Thank you all very much. And for the main host, the ministry itself, let's clap for the entire sector. And to all the development partners, those who helped to ensure that this day and this week is a success, we thank you all very much. And I don't know, Doctor, who is going, if there is any administrative announcements, we can do it now, otherwise this is the end. Once the guest of honor has spoken, protocol demands that nobody else speaks officially. Every other communication thereafter is now informal. Otherwise, thanks a lot. I want to thank my colleague, Josephine Karunji, with whom we have moderated this function from Sunday last week. Thank you very much, Josephine, and to all of your participants, thank you. As like the PS said, until next year when we have the 5th Water Week, God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Charles. Let's give you another big clap. You have done a fantastic job. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. And to mark the end of the 4th Uganda Water and Environment Week, we have organized a small cocktail out there. So let's interact, let's celebrate as we congratulate ourselves for a very successful event. So, Honorable Minister, we want to request that you lead us to have some small bite and drink as we celebrate the successful conclusion of the Uganda Water and Environment Week. We want to thank all of you, and we'll see you again next year when we will be celebrating the 5th Uganda Water and Environment Week. Thank you very much.
Wait.
No one should stop you from finishing what's yours. That's why MTN gives you data bundles that don't expire. Load MTN Freedom Bundles using My MTN app and enjoy the freedom to finish your data bundles. MTN.